are these people?
The next story is also crazy. Of course, we know that media is the media that is actually trying to report the truth and hold Israel to account is being targeted by the Hasbaras, by the Zionists, and they're trying to silence them and get them treated as terrorists in some cases. So, in that vein, there is a publication called the Palestine Chronicle run by Ramzy Baroud. They've become a target in the UK. This case is not justice, it's intimidation, it's not law, it's propaganda dressed in the robes of a courtroom. This is written by Ramzy Baroud. So this is the perspective of the outlet being targeted. Let me make this a little bigger so people can follow along. The Palestine Chronicle is not a militant organization. It is a modest, independent publication sustained by small donations and animated by a singular mission to bear witness. It tells the untold stories of Palestine, documenting dispossession, resistance, and the endurance of a people condemned to silence. In a media landscape dominated by powerful conglomerates repeating the language of governments, which is what we talked about from Asal Rod earlier, the Chronicle insists on a journalism of proximity, grounded in daily lives, in the rubble of Gaza, in voices otherwise erased. Its true offense in the eyes of detractors is not invention, but truth. At the heart of this endeavor stands Ramzy Baroud. His career is the antithesis of clandestine. For decades, he has written, taught, and spoken in public, producing books translated into multiple languages, contributing columns to international publications, and addressing audiences in universities and public forums across continents. He's not a shadowy figure. He's a man whose work has been consistent, transparent, and intellectually rigorous, even when you disagree with him. His life is not untouched by the tragedy he describes. Many members of his family were killed under Israeli bombardments. Yet, while mainstream media rushed to amplify unproven allegations against him, they remained deaf to his personal grief. His tragedy was ignored, his integrity overlooked, his voice distorted, because his engagement is unbearable for those who would prefer silence. He's an engaged journalist of the noblest sense, independent, lucid, unflinching. His so-called crime is not collusion with violence, but fidelity to memory. We covered that. How many years ago? Is something we talk about all the time. That's why he's demonized, not for what he's done in law, but for what he represents in conscience. America, unable to silence Palestinian voices through censorship alone, now instrumentalizes its justice system to achieve by indictment what it failed to achieve by argument. Having harassed universities, intimidated students, and punished professors for their solidarity with Gaza, it now turns the courtroom into a new battlefield. And Congress, captive to the whims of its Zionist paymasters, not just masters, but paymasters, joins the manhunt, targeting a journalist for the sole offense of telling the truth about his people. As for the mainstream corporate press, it chooses cowardice, as it always does, ignoring his family's suffering, ignoring the emptiness of the charges, while echoing the accusations of power as if they were evidence. Twisted law into weapon? Yeah, that's what they're doing. The complaint filed against Ramzy Baroud and the organization, the People Media Project, that runs the Palestine Chronicle, rests on the Aliens Tort Statute, grotesquely overstretched to criminalize editorial decisions rather than acts of war. It alleges that by publishing articles from Abdallah al-Jamal, who's described by Israel as a Hamas operative killed during a hostage rescue, the Chronicle aided and abetted terrorism. But here lies the first fissure. The characterization of al-Jamal comes exclusively from Israeli military sources, themselves a belligerent party. Trust me, bro. It's never been independently verified. The claim that he was both a journalist and a Hamas operative remains an allegation, not an established fact. To treat it as judicial evidence is to replace proof with propaganda. It's, a selective convenience. Even if, hypothetically, al-Jamal had, at the demand of a militant group, harbored hostages, such a circumstance would not in itself render him culpable. What ordinary civilian in a war zone can refuse the command of militants under threat of force? And even if it occurred, how could Ramzy Baroud have known it? Even taken at face value, the allegation collapses upon scrutiny. No evidence demonstrates that the Chronicle or its editor had actual knowledge of al-Jamal's supposed operational role, even though it doesn't exist, nor that modest freelance payments, if any at all, bore any casual nexus to hostage-taking. They're just twisting this. The federal judge in February of 2025 dismissed the original complaint precisely for lack of proof or knowledge or intent. The plaintiffs returned with an amended filing, repackaged in rhetoric and pathos, but still devoid of the material elements required under international law. Actus reus, a substantial contribution to the crime, and mens rea, intent or knowledge. They don't have them. To equate the publication of articles with material support for terrorism is not jurisprudence, but a juridical contortion. It is the substitution of law by politics, the criminalization of journalism under the mask of counterterrorism. All right? Journalism is not a crime. What is sought isn't justice, but intimidation. To cast suspicion on every Palestinian voice, to brand their words as weapons, their witness as crime. They want to silence everyone that's speaking about Palestine. Thus, the legal emptiness is evidence. All right. And they give the jurisdiction was overstretched because the ATS was never intended to criminalize editorial contracts, that there were elements unmet, that there was no proven knowledge or intent, no substantial assistance at all. All right. That factual information was, he was literally just republishing what the guy was telling him. Factual information foundation was unstable. Again, the Hamas label rests on unverified allegations from one warring party that has complete stake in treating this person and calling them that, even though they don't have evidence and I haven't produced any. And then political aim is transparent, which is to silence Palestinians and punish one of their most articulate representatives for independence. This case is not justice, it's intimidation. It's not law, it's propagandists dressed in the robes of a courtroom. The allegation against Ramzy Baroud rests not on proof, but on the word of a belligerent army. An army that bombs, besieges, and murders, then dictates who's a journalist, who's a terrorist, who's fit to speak. To transform those claims into evidence is to surrender law itself to war. We just talked about that double tap thing. It's the same type of thing. Ramzy Baroud is not a conspirator. He's a journalist of record, a man of books, a teacher, a witness. His own family has been buried under rubble, and yet America hasn't mourned them, hasn't spoken of them. Instead, it chooses to hunt him, to turn his grief into accusation, his fidelity into crime. Some congressmen have joined this manhunt. Fuck them. Eager to please their Zionist patrons. Universities have been disciplined, their students silenced. The press, that great sentinel of truth, has abandoned him. Repeating only the charges while ignoring his suffering. This isn't democracy, it's servitude. The elements of law are absent. There is no actus reus, no mens rea, no casual link. There's only suspicion. All right. There's only the will to silence. And so the true purpose stands naked. To criminalize the Palestinian word, to punish a journalist for speaking the truth of Gaza, to make an example of him so that others will be afraid to write. But intimidation isn't justice. A trial without evidence isn't law. And silencing the witness won't erase the truth. All right. And then we've got more on here. That's Ramzy Baroud right there. All right. The guy who wrote this was Mohammed El Mokhtar Sidi Haiba, social political analyst. Okay. And he wrote this to Palestine Chronicle about Ramzy. The American judicial system has a choice to lend its authority to propaganda, which is what it's going to do, or to defend the very principle that sustains that law, that guilt must be proven and not declared. To condemn him would be to condemn journalism itself. To acquit him is to restore some dignity to justice. The choice is clear. And the choice of what they're choosing to do is also clear, as the Dissident has shown, that the Trump administration has now sanctioned Palestinian NGOs for documenting Israeli war crimes. So what do you think they're going to do to Ramzy Baroud?
Yep.
All right. Sanctions for exposing Israeli war crimes. That's what they're doing. All right. They're sanctioning Al-Haq, Al-Mizan Center for Human Rights, and the Palestinian Center for Human Rights as retaliation for their documentation of Israeli war crimes. I'm waiting for the Hind Rajam Foundation also to be targeted. All right. The Hind Rajam Foundation actually reports on Israeli soldiers in foreign countries to have them brought up on genocide charges so that they can't travel anywhere in the world. And they're not allowed to vacation. Not when you commit genocide. The sanctions announcement from Rubio states that the sanctions are placed because, quote, these entities have directly engaged in the efforts by the ICC to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute Israeli nationals without Israel's consent. Why do they need Israel's consent when they've committed war crimes? The announcement then goes on to blatantly admit that the U.S. and Israel are rogue states that don't adhere to international law, writing, this administration has been clear. The U.S. and Israel are not party to the Rome Statute. Therefore, we're not subject to the ICC's authority. We oppose the ICC's politicized agenda, which it isn't. They want to stop genocide, all right, and overreach and disregard for the sovereignty of the U.S. and that of our allies. Nonsense. The UN also has said the same thing. Francesca Albanese has said the same thing. Every organization has declared its genocide. Fuck Marco Narco Rubio. By the admission of Marco Rubio's own announcement, the Trump admin is sanctioning human rights organizations because they're collecting evidence of U.S.-backed Israeli war crimes, which the U.S. and Israel oppose because they're rogue states that refuse to adhere to the Rome Statute and international law. Make that sentence make sense. Because they're not part of it to begin with. So the latest sanctions are just the latest in a broader campaign by the Trump admin using sanctions to crack down on international organizations and figures for documenting Israeli war crimes. Again, Francesca Albanese, he put out a bombshell report showing all spheres of the American military-industrial complex, including Trump-connected companies like Palantir, were profiting off the genocide. The Trump admin placed sanctions on her. They're just going to sanction everybody in the end. So, fuck Israel for that. And fuck the United States government for that. Fuck Trump. Fuck Rubio. All right. In reality, her report had meticulously documented how American companies are directly complicit in Israeli war crimes, showing like that Lockheed Martin manufactured F-35s and F-16 fighter jets were integral to equipping Israel with the unprecedented aerial power to drop an estimated 85,000 tons of bombs, much of it unguided, to kill and injure more than 180,000 Palestinians. The Caterpillar supplied D9 bulldozers, documented as being used to carry out mass demolitions. Right? Palantir's AI providing automatic predictive policing technology, core defense infrastructure for rapid and scaled-up construction and deployment of military software, and of course its AI platform, which allows real-time battlefield data integration for automated decision-making. You mean murdering? Yes. All right. The announcement from Rubio about the sanctions on Francesca Albanese again explicitly said it was retaliation for her working with the ICC on the war crimes probe against Israel, and openly stated that the U.S. and Israel do not adhere to international law. Insane. A bought and paid for administration. Again, this is from the Dissident, the 307.substack.com. These are his top donors. While he was a senator, Trump also was bankrolled in large part by Israel lobbyists in 2024. We got Miriam Edelson, Paul Singer, etc., etc. Go check out the rest of this article. I'll drop the link in the description. But they're sanctioning organizations that are trying to support Palestinians, raise money for Palestinians, and they're sanctioning and trying to criminalize journalists and outlets that platform Palestinians. I'm guessing that the electronic intifada will be next, right behind Ramzy Baroud, because they definitely have, put journalists out there that Israel has later called Hamas. And therefore, the EI will then be charged with platforming Hamas. And anyone that interviews a Palestinian at some point will then be charged with being a terrorist as part of Hamas. It's crazy where this is going. And so we need to talk about it, because I don't see too many people talking about this or specifically focusing on this. They talk about it in a broader context of what's happening. But the way that individual organizations and people are being targeted, first they came for the socialists and the trade union, and the famous poem about then they came for me and there was no one left to stand for me. It kind of feels like they're trying to come for everybody, so there's no one left to stand for us. So that's why we have to stand for them. All right. So that's more fuck Israel, but all about the censorship that's been happening and trying to silence Ramzy Baroud, trying to silence the Palestinian NGOs in the United States. And hopefully that is going to stop, but I don't see it stopping anytime soon. My worry is they're going to try to deport him to somewhere like Uganda, but we'll see. In the meantime, we're not monetized on YouTube. If you're able to and of means, please help us out by tipping our network in one of several different ways. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. You got paypal.me/Indie News Network. You got IndieNewsNow.com, IndieNewsNow.com. I stumbled there. INNNewsletter.com. We're going to be live in a half an hour there for boats smashing into other boats or so, probably 12:15. And then IndieMediaToday.com, where we are, again, live right now over on Substack. Support independent media, because we need it more than ever. I love you all, and see you soon, everyone. Have a good night.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
We are out of here.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say?
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you